The first alarms came not from the skies but from the ground. The people of Earth had long prepared for the idea of invasion coming from above, with fleets of ships entering the atmosphere. But the war began with silence, with shadows creeping into cities, and with people disappearing overnight. By the time governments realized what was happening, it was already too late. The aliens were not here to bargain. They were here to take. And one of the many they took was a boy who never thought his life would become the center of a story that would shake the galaxy. He was small compared to others, not yet strong enough to defend himself. When the soldiers of the alien slavers came, their glowing whips crackling in the dark, he had no chance. His family was scattered in the chaos, the cries of his mother and the silence of his father echoing in his memory. He was dragged into a cage of metal, the bars humming with strange energy, and for the first time in his young life, he felt the weight of chains that were not made for humans, but for breaking spirits. His life was no longer his own. The journey away from Earth was a blur of fear. The slaver's ship smelled of oil and burning wires. Hundreds of others sat with him, all silent, all broken. Some were human, others were alien children taken from worlds he had never heard of. Their eyes were wide, their voices stolen by terror. He wanted to cry, but the slavers punished noise. Every time someone whispered, the whip cracked, and the sound cut through the silence like a blade. It was there, in the shadows of that prison ship, that the boy realized the galaxy was not fair, and humanity was not ready. Days turned into weeks, though he could not tell time without the sun. He learned the slavers had no names, only titles, and they ruled with cruelty. They fed the captives just enough to keep them alive, but not enough to make them strong. The boy felt his body grow weaker, but inside him, something else grew, something that the slavers could not touch. A spark of anger. A spark of survival. He did not know it yet, but that spark would one day burn brighter than any chain could hold. When the ship landed on a desert world, he was dragged out into the blazing light. Rows of buyers waited, their robes flowing in the hot wind. They spoke in languages he could not understand, but their gestures were clear. They were bidding for lives. He stood among others, and when the slavers pulled him forward, he felt their hands grip his arms like he was nothing but an object. The price for his life was shouted, and he was sold, just like that. No voice asked him, no choice was given. He was no longer a boy. He was property. His new master was a towering figure with pale skin and eyes that glowed like embers. The master's palace was carved into the side of a canyon, and inside, the boy was given tasks meant to break him. Cleaning machines he could not understand, hauling crates heavier than his body, and serving meals to guests who never looked at him. Every mistake brought punishment. Yet the boy did not cry, he did not scream. He swallowed his pain and carried it, waiting, though he did not know what he was waiting for. One night, as he carried a tray of glowing cups, he overheard the guests speaking. They talked of Earth, of the humans who were weak, fragile, and unworthy of freedom. They laughed at the idea that humans could ever fight back. The boy's hands shook, and one cup slipped from the tray, shattering on the floor. Silence fell in the room, and he waited for the whip. But instead, his master studied him with strange eyes, not cruel this time, but curious. The boy did not understand it then, but something in that moment changed. The days passed, and whispers spread in the palace. Some said the humans of Earth were not as weak as believed. Some said resistance had begun. The boy heard the words and clung to them like water in a desert. If humanity was fighting, maybe he would see his family again. Maybe he would return home. He had no proof, but hope is not built on proof. It is built on the refusal to let go. And then came the night when he saw something impossible. From the canyon walls, fire lit up the sky. Explosions shook the palace, and alarms screamed through the corridors. The boy dropped the crate he carried and pressed himself against the cold stone wall. Voices shouted, and for the first time, The slavers looked afraid. Above, through the smoke and fire, a ship descended, not a slaver ship, but something different. Sleek, powerful, and marked with the flag of Earth. Humanity had come, and they were not here to bow. The boy felt his chains grow lighter that night, not because they were gone, but because he knew they could be broken. The war was not over, but the story had just begun. The boy pressed himself against the stone wall as the palace shook. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the air filled with the smell of burning metal. The guards ran in every direction, their voices raised in panic. He had never seen them afraid before. Their power had always been absolute, their cruelty untouchable. But now something had changed, and he felt it in his bones. Humanity had arrived. He clutched the chains on his wrists, heavy and cold. They cut into his skin as he moved, but he ignored the pain. The sound of explosions grew closer, echoing through the canyon. The slaves around him whispered, their eyes wide with terror and hope mixed together. Some thought this was another raid, another group of slavers fighting for control. But the boy knew better. He had seen the flag on the ship. It was Earth. It was his people. The master stormed into the hall, his glowing eyes burning brighter than ever. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade, commanding the guards to hold their ground. He called the attackers weak, fragile, fools who would be crushed. Yet the tremor in his words betrayed him. For the first time, the master did not sound certain. He sounded afraid. The boy's heart pounded. Fear mixed with something new, pride. Humanity was not silent anymore. The boy was herded with other slaves into a corner of the hall. Guards raised their weapons, ready to cut them down if they tried to flee. He stood still, breathing hard, trying to understand what was happening. The walls shook again as another blast ripped through the palace. Then, with a roar, the main doors exploded inward, and the attackers entered. They were human soldiers, armored in steel that glowed under the light of fire. Their rifles hummed with energy, and their faces were hard with determination. The boy's chest tightened. He had never seen humans like this, strong, fearless, ready to face the galaxy's cruelty head-on. For a moment, he could not breathe. He had thought humanity broken, but here they were, alive and unyielding. The battle was chaos. Blades clashed with rifles, alien roars echoed against human shouts, and fire tore through stone. The boy ducked behind a crate, his chains clattering as he moved. He watched as soldiers fought with a precision and fury he had never imagined. The slavers had always seemed invincible, but now they fell one by one under human fire. The boy's master charged into the fight, his tall frame towering over the soldiers. His blade cut through the air, glowing with alien power. For a moment, it seemed he would turn the tide, but then one soldier stepped forward. Unlike the others he carried no rifle. He wielded only a steel blade, simple compared to the alien weapon. Yet he moved with a strength that shook the boy's heart. The master struck, but the soldier blocked. Sparks flew, and the boy could feel the power in every strike. The two clashed in the center of the hall, and all eyes turned to watch. The boy's hands trembled as he gripped his chains. He wanted to run to the soldier, to beg for freedom, but fear held him still. What if the humans failed? What if this was their last hope, and it broke before his eyes? He lowered his head, unable to watch, but the sound of steel against alien blade forced him to look again. The human fought with a rage born of survival, each strike heavier than the last. The master stumbled, his glowing eyes dimming, and then, with one final strike, the human drove his blade through the master's chest. Silence fell over the hall. The towering figure crumpled to the ground, his ember-like eyes flickering before fading into darkness. For the first time, the boy saw the slavers fall. For the first time, the chains on his wrists felt like nothing. The soldiers moved quickly, securing the hall, freeing slaves, and checking for survivors. One of them approached the boy, their armor scratched and smoking from battle. The soldier knelt, and for the first time since his capture, someone looked at him not as property, but as a person. "You're safe now," the soldier said, their voice steady but gentle. The boy stared, unable to speak. His throat burned with words that would not come. He wanted to say thank you, wanted to tell them about his family, about Earth, about the fear that had been crushing him for so long. But all that came out was a single tear that ran down his cheek. The soldier placed a hand on his shoulder, firm and reassuring. The chains were cut, and the boy felt the weight fall away. He rubbed his wrists, staring at the marks left behind. For so long, the chains had been part of him, and now they were gone. He looked at the soldier, his chest heavy with emotions he could not name. Freedom was strange. It hurt, but it also healed. The humans gathered the freed slaves and led them toward the landing ships. The boy followed, each step uncertain, as if the ground beneath him was no longer real. He glanced back at the palace, now burning in the distance, and felt something shift inside him. He was no longer the boy who had been sold, no longer the boy who had been silent. Something had awakened. As the ship's doors closed, he took one last look at the desert world that had been his prison. The engines roared, lifting him toward the stars. For the first time, he dared to believe in tomorrow. The boy sat quietly in the corner of the transport ship as it left the desert world behind. His eyes stared at the stars through the small window, wide and uncertain. He had never seen space like this before. From the slaver ship, space had looked cold and endless, but from this vessel, it seemed alive. The stars no longer mocked him. They called to him. The soldiers moved around the cabin, checking equipment and speaking in short, firm voices. Some looked tired, others grim, but all of them carried themselves with pride. They had fought and won, and their presence filled the air with strength. One soldier brought him food, simple bread and water. The boy held it with shaking hands. He had almost forgotten the taste of real food. He ate slowly, afraid it might vanish if he hurried. He listened as the soldiers spoke about Earth. They said the resistance was growing, that humans were learning faster than the galaxy expected. They said humanity would never bow. Each word lit a spark inside him. He had believed humans were weak, because that was what the slavers told him every day. But here he saw the truth. They were not weak. They were survivors. When the ship finally reached Earth, the boy's heart raced. Through the window, he saw his planet glowing in the dark of space, blue and green, alive and beautiful. He pressed his hand against the glass, his chest tight with longing. It had been only months since he was taken, but it felt like years. He had feared he would never see his home again. Now it was right in front of him. The landing was rough, the engines groaning as the ship descended through the clouds. When the doors opened, sunlight poured in, warm and bright. The boy stepped out slowly, breathing the air like it was his first breath. Around him, the base was alive with movement, soldiers unloading cargo, doctors rushing to treat the rescued slaves, children crying out for their families. It was chaos, but it was human chaos, and it felt safe. He was taken to a large building with white walls and long halls. Doctors examined him, marking notes on glowing screens. They spoke gently, asking his name, asking if he remembered his family. He whispered answers, his voice weak but steady. They gave him clean clothes, soft and warm. For the first time in months, he slept on a bed instead of the hard floor. Days passed, and he began to notice things he had forgotten. The sound of laughter in the halls, the smell of food cooking in the kitchens, the feeling of water running over his hands when he washed. These were small things, but to him, they were everything. Each reminded him that he was alive, that he had survived. Yet the chains around his heart were not gone. The marks on his wrists still burned, and the memories haunted him when he closed his eyes. One morning, a soldier came to see him. It was the same one who had cut his chains. The soldier sat across from him, their voice calm but firm. "You are safe now, but safety is not enough," they said. "The galaxy is bigger than you know, and it will not stop. You must be ready." The boy frowned, confused. Ready for what? The soldier leaned closer. For the truth. Humanity is not just fighting to protect itself. We are fighting for every child like you, every world enslaved. The slavers think we are fragile. They think we break easily, but we are not what they believe. The boy listened, his hands clenched on his knees. He wanted to believe the soldier's words. He wanted to think the galaxy could change, but doubt gnawed at him. "I'm just a boy," he whispered. The soldiers shook their head. "No, you are proof. They tried to break you, but you are still here. That matters more than you know." The words stayed with him long after the soldier left. He thought about the other children he had seen on the slaver ship, their eyes hollow with fear. He thought about his family, scattered and lost. He thought about Earth, standing strong even when the galaxy mocked it. Slowly, something inside him shifted. He was not just a victim. He was part of something larger. Weeks later, he was placed in a school. At first, he felt out of place. The classroom was full of children who laughed and joked, who wrote on paper and tapped on glowing screens. He sat quietly at his desk, his large eyes scanning the room, unsure how to act. Some students whispered about him, others stared, but most kept their distance. He was different. He knew it, but then one girl sat beside him. She smiled, simple and kind, and slid a notebook across the desk. "You don't have to do this alone," she said. Her voice was gentle, but it struck deeper than the whip ever had. For the first time, he felt like maybe he belonged. The days turned into weeks, and slowly he began to change. He learned to read human words again, to write letters, to solve problems. He listened to history lessons, stories of Earth struggles, of how humanity had always fought against impossible odds. Each story echoed in his heart. Humanity had always been underestimated, always mocked, always called fragile. And yet they survived. So would he. Still, the shadows of the past followed him. At night, he dreamed of chains and desert suns, of whips cracking in the dark. He woke shaking, his breath ragged, but each time he remembered the soldier's words. "You are proof." He began to believe it. The boy was slowly learning how to live again. But life on Earth was not as easy as he first believed. At school, the children smiled at him, but many also whispered when they thought he could not hear. They wondered why his skin glowed faintly in the dark, why his eyes shimmered like glass, why he sometimes stayed silent for hours. He tried to fit in, but he could feel the distance between himself and the others. Some teachers treated him kindly, speaking softly and encouraging him when he struggled with words. Others treated him like a burden, a reminder of the war that had reached Earth's heart. They said he was strange, that he carried danger with him. The boy heard these words, and though he tried to ignore them, they cut deeper than chains. He wanted so badly to belong, to feel human again. But the galaxy had marked him. One afternoon, while walking home from school, he was stopped by a group of older boys. Their eyes were cold, and their laughter was sharp. "You're not one of us," one of them said. "You're an alien. You don't belong here." They shoved him, their words hitting harder than their fists. The boy stumbled, his wrists burning with the memory of chains. For a moment, he almost believed them, almost. But then he remembered the soldier's words, "You are proof." His hands curled into fists, not to fight, but to hold on to himself. He stood tall, even though his legs shook. "I do belong," he whispered. The boys sneered and left him there, but he did not cry. He refused to let them take away the strength he had fought so hard to find. That night, he sat under the stars, staring at the sky. His heart ached, not just for his family, but for every child still trapped in cages across the galaxy. He wondered if they too were staring at the same stars, dreaming of freedom. He whispered a promise to the night, a promise that one day he would help them, just as humanity had helped him. The war had not ended. He heard it in the news broadcast that played in the base where he lived. The galaxy was still tearing itself apart, and humans were still fighting to prove they could not be broken. Some alien empires had begun to fear humanity, calling them dangerous. Others laughed, saying humans were nothing but animals pretending to be strong. But the boy knew the truth. He had seen the soldiers fight, seen the master fall, seen chains break. Humanity was not pretending. Humanity was rising. Weeks later, the boy was taken to a special gathering at the Earth Defense Council. He was nervous as soldiers escorted him through tall steel doors into a vast chamber filled with leaders, scientists, and officers. The air buzzed with tension. On a large screen, messages from alien powers scrolled past, filled with threats and warnings. Humanity was standing on the edge of something greater, and the galaxy was watching. One of the council members asked him to speak. His voice nearly failed him, but he saw the soldier who had freed him standing in the corner, watching. With steady eyes, he remembered their words. He lifted his chin, his voice trembling but clear. He told the council about the desert world, about the chains, about the laughter of slavers who believed humans would always kneel. He told them how wrong that laughter was, and how Earth's flag had given him hope when he thought he had none left. The room was silent when he finished. Some leaders looked away, their eyes wet with emotion. Others nodded slowly, their jaws set with determination. The boy sat back down, his chest heavy, but inside him burned a quiet fire. He had spoken not just for himself, but for every captive child still waiting in the dark. Later that night, as he walked through the base, he was stopped again. But this time it was not by boys mocking him. It was by children who had also been rescued. They looked at him with wide eyes, and one asked, "Is it true? Did you really stand before the council?" The boy nodded, shy but firm. Their faces lit up, and in that moment, he realized something. He was not just a survivor anymore. He was a symbol. The soldier found him sitting alone afterward. "You did well," they said. The boy shook his head. "I only told the truth." The soldiers smiled, though their eyes were tired. Sometimes the truth is the sharpest weapon. The boy thought about those words as he lay in bed that night. The galaxy still hated humanity. Chains still clung to countless worlds. But he was no longer afraid. The slavers had taken his childhood, but they had not taken his will. He was free, and freedom was powerful. For the first time, he dreamed not of chains or whips, but of stars. Waiting to be claimed, stars where no child would ever be sold again. He did not yet know how, but deep inside he knew this. He would not just live on Earth. He would help humanity change the galaxy. The boy's life on Earth slowly grew larger than he expected. At first, he was only another rescued child, a quiet figure among hundreds who had been freed from slavery. But word of his story began to spread. Soldiers whispered about the boy who survived chains. Council members remembered his trembling but strong words. And children who had been rescued looked to him as if he carried a light inside him. He did not seek it, yet it followed him everywhere. One morning, the soldier who had freed him took him to a different building, one he had never entered before. Its walls were made of dark steel, and guards stood watch at every door. Inside, he found men and women sitting around a glowing table. Maps of stars flickered above it, showing systems across the galaxy. Many of the names he did not know, but he understood the symbols of fire that marked where battles had taken place. The council member, who had first asked him to speak, looked at him again, their eyes calm but sharp. "You are not just a survivor," they said. "You are a voice the galaxy must hear. Some will not listen to soldiers or leaders, but they will listen to you, because you lived it." The boy hesitated, his small hands curling into fists. He had only just begun to feel human again, only just begun to smile in classrooms and laugh with children. Now they wanted him to face the galaxy that had broken him. Fear stirred in his chest, but when he looked at the map and saw how many systems still burned, he knew he could not stay silent. Soon after, he was taken aboard a ship bound for the outer stations where humans now stood guard. It was his first time leaving Earth since he had been freed, and the stars no longer looked endless, they looked alive with possibility. Soldiers treated him with respect, bowing slightly as he walked past. It felt strange. He was still the boy who had once carried crates in silence, but now people looked at him as if he carried the strength of Earth itself. When the ship docked, the air was tense. Alien envoys had arrived, demanding to speak with humanity. They were tall and severe, their robes heavy with symbols of power. Their eyes lingered on the boy as he entered the chamber, and whispers passed between them. One spoke with a voice that was both cold and amused. "So this is your proof? A child who once wore chains?" The boy felt the weight of their words. But he also remembered the whip, the desert, the laughter of slavers. He lifted his chin. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the room. "I am not proof of weakness. I am proof of survival. You thought we would break, but here I stand. And I am not the only one." The chamber fell silent. The aliens exchanged looks, some mocking, some uneasy. The human commander beside him smiled faintly, proud but silent. The boy did not need anyone to speak for him anymore. He had found his own voice. Later, as the ship traveled back toward Earth, the soldiers sat with him. "You see now?" they asked. "You are more than a boy. You are a reminder to them that humanity cannot be erased." The boy nodded slowly. "But I don't want to only remind them. I want to fight, not just with weapons, with truth." His voice shook, but his eyes were steady. The soldier studied him for a long time before answering. "Then you must be ready. The galaxy will not forgive you for speaking. They will fear you. They will hate you. But they will hear you." The boy carried those words with him as the weeks passed. He trained in the base's halls, not with rifles or blades, but with history and knowledge. He learned about other enslaved races, about the endless wars fought to keep the strong in power and the weak in chains. He read of humanity's past, of their own long struggles against tyranny and oppression. Each story built something inside him. One evening, while walking back from the library, he saw a group of children playing outside. They laughed, running in circles, free under the open sky. He stopped and watched, his heart heavy but also bright. That laughter was what he wanted to protect. Not for himself, but for every child still trapped in cages among the stars. But the galaxy was already stirring. Messages began to flood in, some from alien rulers demanding his silence, others mocking humanity for lifting up a slave boy as a symbol. Yet there were also messages of hope, quiet signals from distant worlds, voices whispering that if humanity could rise, maybe they could too. The boy read these words late at night, his hands shaking, and he knew his path was no longer his own. Soldier found him again, standing by the window of the base and staring at the stars. "You're changing," the soldier said softly. "I don't want to change," the boy whispered. "I just want to be normal." The soldier placed a hand on his shoulder. "You can't be normal. Not after what you lived through, but you can be more. And that scares them." The boy nodded slowly, his reflection in the glass looking older than his years. He was no longer just the boy sold into slavery. He was becoming something else, a symbol, a voice, perhaps even a spark that would set the galaxy on fire. And though fear never left him, he held it close, not as a chain but as fuel. Because now he knew the truth. Chains could be broken, and even a boy once enslaved could rise to change the fate of worlds. The boy stood at the heart of the great hall on Earth, surrounded by leaders, soldiers, and survivors. The chamber was alive with the glow of holographic stars, each one representing a world in the galaxy. Some burned red with war, some flickered with rebellion, and others were dark, silent under the grip of slavers. He stared at them, his chest heavy, knowing his voice was about to carry further than it ever had before. It had been months since he had first been freed. Months since the chains fell from his wrists and the desert sun stopped burning his back. He was no longer only the child who had been sold. He had grown, not in years, but in spirit. His voice no longer shook when he spoke. His eyes no longer looked down when others stared. Humanity had given him more than freedom. It had given him a place, but now the galaxy itself was listening. The council chamber filled with envoys, alien and human alike. Some came to laugh, some to threaten, and some to listen in silence. Their robes shimmered, their eyes sharp. They looked at the boy as though he was both nothing and everything at once. To them, he was just a child. Yet to the humans he was proof of something greater. He was living evidence that even the smallest flame could survive the darkest storm. He stepped forward, his hands clenched at his sides. The hall grew quiet. His voice was soft at first, but steady. "I was sold," he said. "I was taken from my family. I was beaten, silenced, and chained. I was told that humanity was weak, that Earth would never fight back. But they were wrong, because I stand here now, free." The words echoed through the chamber, bouncing off steel walls. He looked around at the alien envoys, meeting their eyes. One by one, you believe chains last forever. You believe fear makes you strong, but chains can break. Fear can fade. And children like me will remember who gave us freedom. It was not you, it was humanity. Murmurs spread across the chamber, anger and unease mixing together. Some envoys shifted in their seats, others sneered. But the boy did not stop. His voice grew stronger. "You called humans fragile. You laughed at them, but fragility is not weakness. Fragility is what makes them endure. Fragility is what makes them fight harder than anyone else. They bleed, but they rise. And now the galaxy will rise with them." The council members sat straighter. The soldiers' eyes shone with quiet pride. Even the survivors watching from the back seemed taller, as if the boy's words lifted them. Too, he was not only speaking for himself, he was speaking for all of them. When he finished, silence stretched. Then one of the alien envoys stood, their voice sharp and cold. "You are only a boy. What can a boy do to change the galaxy?" The boy met their gaze without fear. "I survived your chains," he said simply. "And that is more than you can say." The hall erupted. Some shouted in anger, others in support. But the boy no longer trembled. He had spoken the truth, and the truth was stronger than any weapon. That night, as he walked out of the chamber, the soldier was waiting. Their armor was scratched, their face tired, but their eyes were warm. "You did it," they said. The boy shook his head. "No, we did it. Humanity did it." He looked up at the stars shining above the city, his heart both heavy and light. The war was far from over. Slavers still ruled worlds, chains still rattled in the dark. But the galaxy had heard him. The chains were not unbreakable anymore. Weeks later, he returned to school. The children greeted him differently now. Some still whispered, but others smiled openly, sitting beside him, sharing notes, laughing with him. The girl who had once slid him her notebook gave him another smile, softer this time, and he smiled back. For the first time, he felt not just like a survivor, not just like a symbol, but like a boy again. That night, before he slept, he whispered to himself, "I was sold, but I was not broken. I was chained, but I was not silenced. I was saved, and now I will save others." His eyes closed, and in his dreams, he no longer saw cages or desert suns. He saw stars, countless stars, each one waiting for freedom. He knew the fight would be long, and he knew fear would never leave him completely. But he also knew something else. He would never face it alone. Humanity had given him more than rescue. They had given him a future. And so the story of the boy who was sold into slavery, yet saved by humanity, came to its true ending, not with chains, not with fear, but with hope that would burn across the galaxy for generations to come.